Hello! Welcome to my show. Have I told you the one about? Every night, 8 p.m. Pacific. You ready to go? Here's some magic. Pew. Here I am. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Have I Told You the One About? This might be my last show for quite some time. Just as a little heads up, there isn't a show tomorrow. Maybe I'll move to a weekly structure. I'm taking a holiday. It's been 9 weeks plus. It's been very exciting. I love all of you for helping me, but I'm taking a little break. But today, finishing on a high note, I have one of my favorite people telling me a story that is very dear to my heart. Whew, it's going to be a good day. So let's just do the magic of, count with me, 1, 2, 3, poof! It's Emma! Hi.
Hello.
Hi, Emma.
And Sophia.
Emma and Sophia. Gives us a little heads up on what the story might be. Here's my story portal. Do you want to send me your story, Emma?
I do.
Oh, that was so delicious. And your story is called My Rainbow Pandemic Birth. So amazing.
All right. Well, this is a story of redemption. In January of 2014, my dad had a seizure, and 7 months later, he was dead.
Oh, man.
And the 7 months between January and July were the most emotionally intense roller coaster of watching my world crumble bit by bit and having to remake everything I expected about who I was and my place in the world and everything. So in May, we knew he was dying, and he was dying in Vancouver where none of my family lived. And so I was in Vancouver helping him die, and my best friend from childhood who knew my dad and grew up with my dad lived there. So she and I are walking the seawall, and I am just like working through the insanity of my season. Like, oh my God, what's going on? And at the time, I wasn't in the best, well, it's not like I was in the bad place in my life, but I was in the liminal phase of my life.
Right.
And now that liminality was getting exploded. And I remember turning to her at a certain point, and I said to her, like, so she's holding her infant, we're walking the seawall. Thank God she was on mat leave, because she was available during the day, and I was very needy. And I said to her, do the math. I'm 33 years old. A major corner of my life is dying right now. It's going to take me a couple of years to recover from this. And what comes after that? 35, TikTok. Am I ever going to have children?
Right.
Also, as much as, like, it took him 7 months to die, I swear I was at a certain point when you're waiting for someone to die, and it sounds harsh, but when you're there, right?
Yeah. You're like, could you not do this faster and save all of us the grief?
Like, listen, I like waiting for someone to die is not
Chomp.
it's kind of like it's not something you want to prolong.
No.
Shock me. Like, I'm already shocked by the death. Let me get there. But like sitting and watching you crumble, I can't handle it.
My dad almost died once, a year and a half before he actually died. The doctors gave him, like, this is what's going to happen. And he changed his mind. He wasn't going to go through any invasive procedures, and he changed his mind. And he said, no, I do want dialysis, la, la, la. And as much as I was relieved that he chose to live longer, the other half of me was also like, this is impractical. You're just making it harder for the rest of us. I know, I totally get that, right?
You feel like such an asshole at the time, but the truth is, they've already died.
Feelings are feelings, too.
Yeah, and normal has already died.
Yeah.
I get more chronological time, but you're not resetting back to normal.
Yeah. We're
It's
never
hard to-
going to the ice cream shop, so why are we bothering? If we can't go for ice cream, it's kind of over for us.
Well, what is a normal day? Anyway.
Yeah.
So, then I remember saying to friends in this terribly gauche, like, grief-infused way, I was like, I am going to go through menopause waiting for my fucking father to die. Anyways, so, and everyone's like, I don't think so. I mean, you're 33. I don't think. And I was just like, I'm going through menopause waiting for this to happen. And I remember walking the seawall and thinking, I want to have a baby. I want to have a baby boy. I want to name him Christopher, which is my father's name. And all those things crystallized so clearly in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt driven like this animal sense that I needed to make this happen.
Mm.
And my friend said, well, why don't you do it alone? And I said, you're crazy. I'm not going to do it alone. And she said, do it alone. And I said, what would you say about your friend, to your other friends, about this crazy woman you know who did it alone? And she said, I would say she's a righteous, independent woman who's really got her shit together. And look, she had this baby alone. Isn't she amazing?
Yeah, fuck you, world.
I was like,
I know how to get sperm out of people.
like, okay, I guess. And she said, I'll ask my husband. I'll get my husband to give you sperm. And I was like, oh God. Like, that's a little too real, too fast.
Yeah, we could do it tonight. Come on. I'm making a pot roast for dinner.
And I was just like, I don't know. And she's like, look at my baby. Look how gorgeous my baby is. You can have a baby like this. And I was like, ah. And she said, okay, then why don't you just look at a sperm bank? So I went online and I looked at a sperm bank catalog. And there were like these little sound clips you could download of dudes' voices being like,
hey, I'm viable.
I've always wanted to like like help people change their lives, and like, I was raised by a single mother and I think it's really great. And I was just
I can just imagine you must be a lesbian, and I'm crazy about impregnating lesbians because that sounds like the ultimate challenge.
you just know. Anyway, I've got so many gorgeous kids, donor conceived kids in my life. They are beautiful, sacred kids. But like, what if that's your donor? You know what I mean? Like, and I was once in a cafe listening to this bro be like, yeah, like I could donate. Like, I'm going to go get tested. I'm going to go donate. And I was like, I would never fucking want your sperm. You know what I mean? Anyway. So I say to my friend,
but just to play the devil's advocate, you also get a lot of great kids out of not so great parents.
Yes.
Like, my dad was not a role model for who you want to be in the world in a lot of ways.
That's really interesting.
And I think I didn't do so badly.
Well, actually, I want to say in one of your stories, you talked about there being too much magic in your dad's line and you needed someplace to go. And I love that as like a self-birth story, like you birthing yourself into the person you are. You're like, listen, there's all this excess magic. None of the dudes knew what to do with it. Like, I got to be the magic in my line. Oh. The thing is, when my dad, who was a good role model, was dying, that is like peak hero worship time, right? So all of a sudden, like, the man that I was going to create a child with became this very important subject. And so I said to Adrian, the truth is, because we're going through these like anonymous donor profiles online, and I say, and we're going through her husband, and I say to her, like, actually, if we're actually talking about this, the person's sperm I would want is Matthew's. And so Matthew is a mutual friend of Adrian and mine, and they did their MFAs together. She was closer to him at the time than I was. And she's like, oh, I'll ask him. And I was like, oh, don't ask him. I'm mortified for even verbalizing it. I once got really drunk with Matthew and asked him if there was this lineup of lesbians around the block who were all vying for his sperm, because to me he was the perfect donor. And he's queer and has got tons of dyke friends. And I was like, clearly these women are all lining up. And he once
the guys don't want me, but these lesbians think my sperm's the bee's knees.
Well, all my friends are lesbians, and so to be honest, when we meet a nice guy, like, the conversation comes up rather quickly, and there's all this anxiety about bringing it up too soon and whatever. So I just assumed Matthew had been approached. And when I broached this to him, very drunk, and when we were just beginning our friendship, he looked so horrified and disgusted by the idea. I was like, oh, I am never bringing this up again. So that had been 6 months before this moment on the seawall. So Adrian's like, I'm going to bring it up with him. And I was like, don't bring it up with him. He hates the idea. And she's like, I'm going to bring it up.
I've already tested the waters, and he vomited a little in his mouth.
Adrian's fearless. Here she wants to give me her husband's sperm. She's willing to broach this thing with Matthew.
Well, I
So I was
wonder
like,
if we could just get some guy, to get Matthew really hot and bothered. And don't worry, Adrian says, I'm on it. I got the perfect guy. He really he's a farmer. He's good with cattle. He'll be great with Matthew. It's good to have resourceful
that's
friends.
right, the little matchmaker. So whatever, that conversation fizzled out. But I remember thinking at a certain point, watching my world end, one of the ways I will rebuild the world in my own heart is by having a baby.
Mm.
So dad dies. I, lose my mind for a year, as people do. And then Adrian and Matthew and about 10 other people and me were all at a bar in Toronto a few months later. And everyone got up to leave at once. And we're all hugging and saying goodbye. But I wasn't leaving. And when I sat down, the whole table had emptied out, except for Matthew, his brother, and me.
Mm.
And I begin some new conversation once it's just the three of us. And Matthew stops me, puts his hand on my hand, and says, Emma, before we go any further, I went camping with Adrian this summer. And she told me that you were interested in my sperm. And my throat tightens, I lose my breath. And I build up this avalanche of anxious excuses. She had no right to approach you. I'm so sorry. Matthew, I swear to God, I don't want your sperm. And he stopped. He's like, Emma, you're not listening to me. I've thought about it. You can have my sperm. You can have my sperm.
I'm too emotional about this. I'm too invested in this story.
And he just made it easy. And I was like, really? And he's like, yeah, Adrian says you think there's these lesbians lining up around the block. He said, I'm so flattered. No, I've never been approached, and you can have my sperm.
Oh.
I couldn't believe it. And all of a sudden, I just felt liberated. I just felt like I was going to be able to have the kind of family I wanted. His brother, who is, oh, you sweet.
I'm a wreck.
You're hard.
I'm a wreck.
I love you for crying. Bless you, Michael. What a good audience. Sweetheart. So then his brother, who is this hilarious, he's just a really good performer. And Thomas was next to Matthew, and he's like, Emma, before you commit too quickly, you might want to consider your options. I mean, look at us.
Same family, but I got the face.
He's like, who's the better of the two? And so then Matthew and I would be having these deep conversations for the rest of the night, and Thomas would be next to Matthew being like, Emma, think about me. Anyway, so I left those two. It was hilarious. It was hilarious. So I left that night, and the next day bought a book called Choosing Single Motherhood, and I began to really get excited. So Matthew and I went out for dinner once a month for the next 2 years, dreaming up all the possibilities, coming up with all kinds of scenarios.
Wow.
And I remember at one point he said, I just had a catastrophic daydream about our future child looking you up in the eyes with tears in their eyes saying, how come Uncle Matthew doesn't live with us? What are you going to say when the kid does that? And I was like, I'm going to say Uncle Matthew is in the south of France fucking his new lover. Do your homework. And Matthew's like, really? That's your reaction? I was like, totally. And he's like, oh my God, thank God. Anyway. So we proceed.
You're really selling it.
So we proceed. And at a certain point, our friendship became so fulfilling that this no longer was plan B. This was something I really wanted. And I was really excited by it. But I was also stringing him along. Every time we'd make plans for the summer, he'd say, can I go out of town for this amount of time? Do you want to inseminate? When's this going to happen? So I turned 35. And, it wasn't the perfect time. But fuck it, I was 35. I don't know if all women go through this, but I feel like I've been waiting for the perfect conditions my whole life. Yeah. I was tired of waiting. A huge part of my life had already ended at 33 or exploded at 33. I needed to get the ball rolling. So,
this is stupid, but it's the same logic I had for writing a novel.
Really?
I
Yeah.
thought that I needed to know things before I could write a novel, and then I realized, well, if you never start a novel, you're never going to learn the things you need to know in order to write a novel. So you just do it now, and you'll figure it out as you go. There's no perfect time. The perfect time is when you want to do it.
Well, and at a certain point, like we all have to make peace with perfectionism, right?
Mm.
It's otherwise going to trap us in
Yeah,
some vision of.
perfectionism.
Yeah, it's hard. I didn't know that was perfectionist thinking. I've done a lot of therapy since.
Mm.
But yeah, like it's terrifying waiting for the perfect time because I've spent a lot of my life waiting. Anyway, so sorry, where am I?
Matthew and you met regularly. He's like, you're 35. It's the summer. He wants to know if he can go out of town.
This probably puts you to shame. Like you probably have a story map every time you tell a story. Yes.
No, no.
Oh, okay. You're a master at
I
it.
don't want my guests. I just want my guests to talk to me.
Okay, well,
Yeah,
kick back.
it's conversation.
Yeah. So, so I turned 35, and I have a trip planned to Toronto, and the period app in my phone tells me I'll be ovulating when I go to Toronto.
Aha.
So I say to Matthew, listen, some of my friends have taken a year and a half to get pregnant. Some of them have taken 5 years. I don't have 5 years. I happen to be coming to Toronto next week. I happen to be ovulating. What do you say we try? I'm not going to come the next month if it doesn't work. We'll just, do it every time I'm in town and it's convenient. I also don't want to tell people I'm trying because I don't want people checking up on me.
Yeah.
This is the best of the worst time.
Spin the roulette wheel and see what happens.
Right.
Yeah.
So Matthew goes out and he buys this little contraption called a stork, which is like made for home insemination, which is no longer on the market, but it was fabulous. And I buy takeout, and he's house sitting in a friend's apartment, and so the two of us drink a bottle of wine and eat some pad thai, and he goes into the room and comes out with this stork full of semen.
You're missing an important part. You're
What?
not playing to your audience.
What?
Hey, you skipped all the hot,
Sorry, I'm very much in the lesbian bubble. Like, just get me. This.
That was an ellipsis that this faggot is interested in.
Yes, true.
Okay, so he comes back with, I'm just playing. He
comes
back.
Yep, and then I go and inseminate myself, and then I just go about my life. 2 weeks later, I take a pregnancy test. It's fucking positive. On what planet?
You picked the right brother.
Oh, men always say that. Listen, I ovulate like a queen. But no, it's true. Matthew's like, oh my God, it must be super sperm. Like, oh. And I wasn't taking my temperature. I was just checking this random period app. I was 35. Everyone tells me that means geriatric. And I was like vibrating. I could not believe it. And then I think, well, let's just wait and see if this actually takes. Well, the first trimester passes and the second trimester passes. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm having a baby. So my mother moves in with me. And we rearrange my apartment and we buy all the things and we set up a changing table. And I finally get that donor agreement I'd been procrastinating on paying for. And I install the car seat in the car. And the tests come back. Now, tests come back and it's a boy. Now, I say this as a feminist educator who has given her life to gender being a social construct. But you got to understand, my grief brain, I wanted a boy, and I wanted to name him Christopher. And these things, when I found out it was a boy, I remember feeling like my heart leapt to the sky. And I just remember these like beams of love shooting down, being like, it's exactly what I've always wanted. This was like divine intervention.
It's the right story. Yeah.
It's the right, and
things are lining up.
It's nothing more comforting than the right story when your life is in shambles. I conceived that baby on the seawall with my best friend as my dad was dying. I knew there'd be a baby Christopher. And my stepmother keeps the Christmas stocking that has my father's name on it for baby Christopher, and my aunt gives me the pewter baptismal mug that has Christopher's name on it that my dad had, so I can give it to my son. And my brother finds the stationery my dad had in his office when he was a professor that says Christopher Lind, and my baby's Christopher Lind because I'm not with a man, so it gets my last name. And so the stage is set for my resilience, right?
Right.
And so everything's going normal. I'm flying through all the tests and flying through all the heartbeat checks. And my mother and I, my due date comes and goes. And my mother and I go to an ultrasound after my due date to, I think, determine the size of the baby, because you just get more monitored after your due date passes.
Right.
And so we go to the ultrasound, and by then, you know, you're so accustomed to people just being in your junk. So I just lie down on the chair and I pull up my top and I, you know, get slathered up with the goop. And the tech is moving the wand over my belly, and she says, I'm having a hard time finding the heartbeat.
Oh, no.
And I was like, And she says, where do you normally find the heartbeat? And I say, I don't know. And I just lie back getting kind of annoyed. Like I've had so many ultrasounds at this point. I've had so many Dopplers on, like figure your shit out, lady. Like my mom and I were actually en route to go buy a stroller later. And so we're kind of talking about that.
Yeah, we got things to do.
And she leaves the room. And then I begin to kind of pause. And I turn to my mother and I say, my mom is like just looking totally normal. And I said, every stillbirth story I've ever read starts with this scene. And Mom said, what scene? And I said, the scene where the ultrasound tech leaves and brings in a doctor who tells us the baby's dead. And Mom says, how does the story end? And I said, I haven't read every stillbirth story, but everyone begins with this scene. So we sit there, and the doctor comes in and says, we can't find the heartbeat. We can't find the heartbeat. We can't find the heartbeat. And I say, get another machine. And she said, we can't find the heartbeat. And I said, is this a diagnosis? And she says, oh, I can see the heart. There's no blood going through. And my mother immediately erupts into tears. She's immediately able to access weeping. She's crying, she's wailing, and I'm numb. I am numb. And I look at my mother, who's losing her mind, rightfully, and I think to myself, okay, kiddo, you need to focus on getting this baby out. Because if you die, it will kill your mother. The baby's dead. You can't die.
Oh,
you need to get this baby out.
Oh, Emma.
Terrible. And I say to my mom, I need the car. I want to drive home. So I drove home because I needed to feel in control of something. And my best friend flew up from Toronto, and I went into the hospital the next day, and the contractions started on their own. And at a certain point, I said to my best friend, our job is to figure out how to have the most beautiful stillbirth possible. And my doula said, I've got a Spotify account. What do you want to listen to? And I said, Sarah McLachlan's album from 1989. So all my best friends came into the hospital room, and we sat around eating laboring snacks, and we played super cheesy little fair music. And there was some anxiety that it was taking too long, but for me, those moments, the whole community was coming out for me. Mm. And my best friend said to me, what do you need me to take away from your apartment? And I said to her, I need you to take the car seat out of the car. I need you to get rid of the crib in my room. And she did. She disassembled all those things so I didn't have to.
Oh, that's so smart.
Right? So brilliant. So brilliant. My former roommate brought food to the hospital for the midwives and for my doula and all my friends to eat. Friends came in from out of town who were traveling. I had about 25 people in the room at one point.
Wow.
And then shit started getting real. And all of a sudden, I felt like you live your whole life anticipating what childbirth will feel like. And women always say, oh, I forget. And I remember thinking, I need to feel everything so I can remember. And at a certain point, it felt like there was a refrigerator on my hips begging to come down. And my body, like something hard with corners that wouldn't move, you know? So when shit was getting real, I told people to leave. And then it was just me and my birth team. And I labored all night long and all morning. And it was brutal. It was brutal. And the anesthesiologist came in to give me an epidural, and it didn't take. And when he came back, I was in so much agony, I couldn't sit the epidural. So after about 30 hours, I'm finally pushing. And it is really hard. Harder than I could have ever imagined. And I feel the baby crowning. And then I just feel him sit there. And he got stuck. He got stuck because he was dead. Babies are supposed to help push themselves out.
Right.
But he was too big. And he got stuck. So he got stuck for 45 minutes.
Oh, Emma.
And so for 45 minutes, the room was tense. And my contractions were slowing down. And I was falling asleep between contractions. And his head was out of my body. And his body wasn't coming out. And I was sitting there in agony, being tortured. And at a certain point, my midwife told me to change positions, and I did. And she said to me, I need him out on the next push, or we're going to need to talk about options, some of which involve the operating room. How do you operate on a baby who's already halfway outside your body?
Right.
And so I don't know where it came from, but I pushed that baby out. And it was the most relief I'd ever felt. So he finally comes out. And my whole family, in the 30 hours that I was laboring, my whole family from across the country got on planes. So they were with me as soon as he was born. And we passed him around the room, and we sang to him, and we kissed him, and we read him poetry, and we cried together. And I wanted pictures with my midwife team because they were amazing. And that's a rite of passage all my friends have gone through. Mm-hmm. And then one of the midwives said, and I had picked his name. His name was Christopher Ruth Gordon. Mm-hmm. Ruth and Gordon were family names, and Christopher was always going to be Christopher. And so at a certain point, one of the midwives said to me, okay, we're going to take Christopher, and I'm going to stand beside him until he's ready to go to the morgue. Which is a brutal thing to say, but it was so beautiful that she was kind of like letting me know as his mother that she wasn't going to leave him alone, you know?
Right.
And so, you know, I got stitched up and discharged, and we went home. And on the way home from the hospital, we stopped at a pharmacy to fill a prescription for me to suppress breast milk. And so I'm sitting in the car having just given birth, and my mother's in the drugstore. And the pharmacist says, like, what do you need this medication for? And my mom explains that her daughter's just had a stillbirth. And the pharmacist said, my mother had a stillbirth 2 years before I was born. And I'm called a rainbow baby. So you tell your daughter that the pharmacist who filled this prescription was a rainbow baby. And if she wants a rainbow baby, I want her to know she can have one. Aren't people incredible? I had never heard that expression before.
I'm not prepared for this story. Oh, I'm a mess.
And what a generous thing for that
Oh,
pharmacist to say. She didn't have to say that.
oh, that's so beautiful.
When you tell people you have an experience with stillbirth, people are fucking horrified.
Yeah,
Rightfully so, but like, what a gorgeous thing for her to say.
yeah.
And so then mom comes in, and that was the first person we saw outside the hospital. So mom comes in back in the car and she says, Emma, like, here are your pills, but guess what? This pharmacist is living proof that you can have another baby. So, I, I, I healed postpartum. I was really well supported. I took a long time. I took a year and a half before I was kind of back out in the world. Then I got a fabulous job in Kelowna where I met you. And after about 2 years, I was beginning to feel like I could try again.
Mm-hmm.
So this summer, Matthew again, same month, I think. I think it was conceived in July. Donated again, and I conceived my daughter Sophia, and again the pregnancy was pretty normal. All of the complaints I had about pregnancy are complaints a lot of women have, and so the first trimester turned into the second trimester, turned into the third. I moved back home to Saskatoon. I was being really heavily monitored, and getting scans every 2 weeks. And everything was looking good. But I was terrified because the parts of my pregnancy that felt normal, they had felt normal the last time. Yeah. And everyone was really surprised that he died last time. And no one really had a definitive reason that he died. And so I just thought, like, it was hard because he was 12 pounds when he was born. So it was this paradox. He was so robust and fully formed and yet dead. So it's not like things had kind of gone right enough until they didn't. Mm-hmm. So with this baby, I was getting heavily monitored in this brand new hospital in Saskatoon. Things were feeling good. And at about 33 weeks, with 7 weeks left to go, when there's a fully viable baby inside of me, I began feeling less movement. The same way I had felt less movement around the same stage of pregnancy with Christopher. Right. And so I would, talk to my care team, and they would say things like, if you're ever nervous, you can come in. And this one night, I was feeling less movement, and I was, feeling a little nervous about it. And as I went to bed, it just escalated. Midnight, I'm feeling nervous. 1 o'clock, I'm feeling nervous. 2 o'clock. And I finally, at 3 o'clock in the morning, drove myself alone to the hospital and checked in and said, I'm 33 weeks pregnant with a history of stillbirth. I need a heartbeat check. I'm really nervous. I'm feeling less movement. They immediately escorted me into the room. And my OB was on call that night. Wow. And she checked the heartbeat and said she could see it fine. But she said, if you want an ultrasound, I will do one. But I have to go do a C-section right now. So give me a couple hours and I'll come back. So I lay in this bed overlooking the Saskatchewan River, alone at 33 weeks pregnant at 4 a.m, watching Netflix, and kind of got grounded in the space and in myself. And when she came back, she brought a portable ultrasound machine and scanned over my belly and went over every anatomical feature and gave me all kinds of reasons why Sophia would survive. And then I said to her, like, I'm feeling really fucked up. I've held a dead baby. I can't hold another one. I can't go through this again. I can't. And she said, Emma, if you need me to deliver this baby right now, I will. No woman should ever be pregnant against her will. It is worth having a premature baby if it means your mental health. I'm happy you came in tonight. You're not wasting my time. I will talk to you about this as much as possible. And that built significant trust. Like, I just was like, this is happening. So we agreed on an early induction date at 38 weeks, and that was Friday, March 13th. And when I got my induction date, one of the nurses said, are you superstitious? Are you nervous about Friday the 13th? And I was like, from what I've been through, like, no. But if you remember, on Friday the 13th, COVID-19 was beginning to escalate. And I kind of feel like beginning in March, we knew it was like in the community. As March turned into mid-March, we were beginning to get a bit more cautious. I remember going to a coffee shop and like washing my hands kind of deliberately. And things were getting a bit more intense. So I check into the hospital on Friday to get induced, and it takes a few days for the induction to fully take place. So on Friday, things were normal. On Saturday, I was told I needed fewer visitors. On Sunday, I was told I could only have one visitor. This whole time, the induction is like I've just got drugs in me. I'm having mild contractions. I'm just waiting to open up.
Well, and
And
I
it's
just want to add, we knew that you were my friend Kim, who's a mutual friend of ours. I was visiting him, and the 13th was a good one. Two of my good friends were born on the 13th, so I was really excited. I was like, "Oh, these two great queer people are born on the 13th, and now my queer friend's going to have a baby on the 13th." And you didn't call me or send a text to tell me you'd had a baby on the 13th. And on the 14th was Kim's birthday, and I was like, "Oh my God, you're going to have a baby on Kim's birthday! Isn't that amazing?" And Kim and I waited, and we didn't hear from you on the 14th. And on the 15th, I said to him, "It's 2 days, and it's weird. Should I send her a note? I don't know whether I should send her a note or not. Because if she's had another stillbirth, I might be the last. She doesn't need anything. She doesn't need to hear from someone who she hasn't reached out to. But I'm kind of losing my mind with, wondering and stress and... Anyways,
right.
just a little background on the other side of it.
That's good. That's good also because I've got the heaviness of the Christopher story, which it's hard to tell quickly. So let me just get more into mid-March. As the 13th approached, I was having acupuncture appointments every day, trying to get my body to go into labor. I was beginning to believe I was actually going to have a baby. Mm-hmm. And I was really excited about the 13th. So my instructions were, show up at the hospital at 8 a.m. and we'll induce you. And I was also told, don't expect a baby on the 13th, definitely by the 14th. But, be easy with your expectations. So I was like, okay, I'm going to be easy. So I was to wait for a phone call at 8 a.m., which was going to tell me when to go into the hospital on the 13th. Mm. So at 8 a.m., I don't get a phone call. And at 9 a.m., I don't get a phone call. So I called the hospital and I said, hi, I'm going to get induced today. What are my instructions? And they were like, what's your name? Sorry, you? Sorry, why do you... And I was just like, get your shit together. I'm having a baby today. Where's my appointment? And I had been a high risk geriatric mother, right, with gestational diabetes. Get me the fucking appointment. And so this nurse who picks up the phone is like, I don't have your name here. Why do you think you're getting induced today? And I said, I'm a 38-year-old gestationally diabetic woman with a history of stillbirth. There was a long pause. She was like, okay, thank you. I'm going to look into your file and prioritize your file and let me get back to you. So she calls back in an hour and she says, they forgot to send your paperwork.
Oh, fuck.
It's this is life and death. But of course, when it comes to your own body, everything is life and death, right? To them, I was probably low risk of the high risk,
Right.
And they were probably getting briefed on COVID. Knowing what we know now, everything was about to shut down. They were probably getting whiffs of it. We didn't necessarily know. Mm. And so that she was like, okay, they forgot to send your file. Can you come in at 8 p.m.? So I lost that whole day of induction. So everyone was expecting news that night that I'm having a baby. I didn't want to be so self-centered as to be like, hey, folks, delay of 12 hours. So, no, but you were not alone. You were not alone in your anxiety.
It was a fucking emotional roller coaster. I just had to forget for long periods of time that you weren't having a baby so I didn't lose my mind.
That is so sweet of you, to be with me in the struggle like that.
Well, the other thing is, we had all done a ritual when you were in Kelowna, and we all had these wristbands of fabric from a little witchy ritual. And there were only 2 of us that I knew from that ritual who was still wearing them. And so I was supposed to snip it once the baby was born. And so I was like, I've got a witchy role to play here. I want to make sure everything goes right. I'm superstitious. It's the 13th.
I know, and I didn't want to say anything to fuck that up. Yeah. Anyway.
No, I totally get it.
Oh God.
right?
Anyway, so
We all knew that we just our job was to just wait. But there's feelings inside all of that.
I remember, so we had this like witchy baby shower event in December before I left Kelowna. And I remember we're all standing in a circle, kind of with our arms around each other. Nora has facilitated this gorgeous thing where everyone's put yarn around their wrists and like given me a blessing, like told
Mm-hmm.
me what they wish for me and for the baby. And we're all standing around a circle, people I've only known for a year and a half. So like while there are legitimately good friends, like we're still kind of all new. And it's kind of new for me to be that vulnerable with people I'm still getting to know. So we're all standing in a circle, and everyone has said some intention towards me. And then it comes to be my turn, and someone says, I think Nora says, and Emma, what are you hoping for? And I like choked, and you were beside me, and I remember like squeezing you for like strength to get the words out. And I said, I just want a living baby, you know? Anyway, so I'm in the hospital alone with my doula, getting progressively more intense updates from the hospital staff that like my parents were bringing me supper at a certain point, and they were like, no more visitors. It's just you and your doula. And I was like, okay. And I'm having mild contractions. And as they get more intense, they're hard to sit through. And at a certain point, they say, okay, you've been contracting now for 2 days. It's time to ramp things up. Let's give you an epidural. Let's give you a Pitocin drip to really chemically induce your body. And so I have to brace. So I've got trauma from the last birth because the epidural didn't take in the last birth, and that was hard. And so I have to sit and brace myself with my doula while the epidural gets administered. And it's not pain-free, and it's a weird feeling. And it just, all of a sudden, my anxiety spikes, and I begin weeping. And I say to my doula, like, I'm now at my limit. Like, I didn't realize how much anxiety I was carrying from Christopher's birth. I thought I was being really brave. I thought I could handle this. I can't handle this anymore. Like I can't do this. Mm-hmm. And she held my hands, and she said, I knew this would be an anxious birth. I knew this was going to be really hard. Once I get the epidural in, I go numb, which is great. Drugs are so great. And I basically, all night long, I'm contracting, and I don't feel it. I'm kind of convulsing. And so Sunday night turns into Monday morning, and there's a shift change, and I am done. Like, it's been 3 days of induction. When is this baby coming? And the new nurse comes on. She says, like, hi, I'm Madison, and I want to do what you're doing one day. I said, you want a 4-day induction? She said, no, I want to have a baby on my own. I want to talk to you about having a baby on my own. And I said, really? And she said, yeah, I've asked to be with you because I want to see this single mother having a baby on her own. So the whole thing just felt so divine, you know? Anyway, I know.
Oh, you gorgeous thing.
Oh, so we're sitting. So honestly, it's pretty low key considering the last birth, which was so active and brutal. I was just sitting down, numb, shaking a lot, not really understanding what the shaking was about. And, a nurse that I knew from my checkups came in. We were chatting. She left. And 5 minutes later, I say, I'm going to vomit. I'm going to vomit. Like, give me receptacles. And I vomit, and I sit up, and I think a bunch of amniotic fluid spilled all over the bed, or I pissed the bed or something. Like, all of a sudden there was just less of me inside, and everything was wet. And I look up, and Madison gets on her little walkie-talkie, and she calls the doctor in, and I begin feeling stuff. I begin feeling pain, and I'm moaning. And all of a sudden Madison says, like, anesthesia. So this anesthesiologist runs down the hall with a pen full of fentanyl, which she pumps into me because the epidural is wearing off and it's clear shit's getting real. And the doctor runs in and says, okay, I think you're fully effaced. Do you want to try some practice pushes? And I say, I can't talk about this right now. And I look at my doula, and my doula's like, Emma, you want to get on the bed? Emma, do you want to? And I said, I need to be on all fours. And I just get on all fours, and all of a sudden I hear, spread your legs wider. And I do. And in 4 pushes, I feel this huge release. And I look up at my doula, and the doula says, "The head's out." And I said, "I don't think so." And I hear, "Emma, turn around, meet your daughter." And I say, "I can't turn around unless she's alive. I cannot turn around. You guys have to tell me she's alive. I cannot turn. I will not turn around if she's not alive." And all of a sudden, she lets out the biggest wail. She is wailing. It's echoing off the walls. And I turn around, and her eyes are open, and she's screaming. And I've got a baby. I've got a baby. And it was easy. And she just fell out of me. And it wasn't a struggle. And my mom was right there outside the room, and she cut the cord. And
Oh my God in heaven.
yeah,
That is unbelievable.
yeah.
I need to plug in my goddamn computer.
Sorry.
Oh, here I am. Look, I barely disappeared. Oh, Jesus.
um,
Well, I think that was the universe's signal to me to just chill the fuck out, Michael, because you're deeply invested in the moments of this story. And so,
and then,
what was that like? They put the baby in your arms and.
well, um, I mean, you're between the worlds when that happens. You're between the worlds. Uh, I have never been so firmly located in the present than when I was with my dad and when my son was born. Those were the only times where I was fully, there was no past or future. You're just totally, totally located in the present. And you're like everything, every moment is being kind of hyper tracked. Like you're vigilant towards every micro moment because, like you're right there. Little things delighted me. Like she knew me. She knew me from the minute she came out. My voice comforted her. My smell comforted her. And I loved her already, but didn't know her. So when she'd open her eyes or she'd make a facial expression, it was mesmerizing. How do I love someone I've never met before? Anyway, what was crazy was that then I spent another 2 days in the hospital, at which point, like, no visitors were allowed. We basically kept my mother with me, didn't tell anyone.
Well, so she was born on the Monday, the 17th?
16th.
16th. And Kim and I got word from you that she had been born because finally we texted to see.
Yeah.
And we were watching the news when your text came in that said these are the new, we're in full pandemic mode, no more school, no more this, no more that. We're watching all that news happen, and then we get an email from you with a picture, a text from you with you and your baby. Oh my God, did I bawl my eyes out. It's a good thing I was with Kim and not at home with my husband, because I'd have been a sloppy mess. I
Yeah.
kept it together
Yeah.
because I was out in the world with my friend.
Yeah. 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 Well, and then when we left the hospital, there was an armed guard at the door. They
Wow.
clear their travel. Like he had a gun.
Directing traffic.
Yeah. And I was just like, fuck, like this is a new world.
Yeah.
And no one's met her.
Yeah.
No family had to cancel plane tickets. I had travel plans. Like no one has met her.
Yeah.
So it's just wild now to be in quarantine with a pandemic. So I don't know, life and death.
Yeah.
My world ended, and the world kept going on in the past, and now my world has really come to life, and the world shut down.
Well, it was such a gift for me too. Like, here was this really profound thing happening in the world, and my dear friend who'd had a stillbirth had a healthy living baby. Like, what a great day that was. I don't care what else was happening in the world. That is always going to be a great day for me. That was such a gorgeous gift that she gave all of us too.
Yeah.
Not to be too sentimental, but it's true. We
Oh,
need
yeah.
to cling to these moments that are, that are precious. And it was all the more precious for what was happening in the world.
Yeah. That's a beautiful thing to say.
Well, it's true. Well, Jesus, you really wrung it out of me.
I'm sorry that was so long. I should have dress rehearsed it.
No, are you
Right.
kidding? That is just a exquisite, exquisite story. Emma, I love you so much.
Love you too.
That was my rainbow pandemic birth. Do you have an addendum? You want to tell the world how you're doing?
Oh, well, I mean,
It's been 2 months.
it's been 2 months. I love her. She is the most delightful little baby. Um, but I mean, I'm tired and I'm learning real fast, and it's overwhelming, but worth it.
That's so
Yeah.
great.
But I miss people. I miss everybody.
Oh man, I was saying I just wish I could jump on a plane and be there and help because I love babies. We've had two friends who live really close to us who've had babies this month, and I haven't held either of them yet. That's so hard.
Right?
She needs to be passed around for her flora and fauna.
Oh,
She needs to get right.
it's really charming and very cuddly, and yeah,
You let her lick anything she wants when she's at home.
yeah, yeah,
Okay, well, let's say goodbye to the world
yeah.
and
Okay.
thank you for sharing that.
Well, and thank you for. I will say just one little thing. In those early days, especially when the world was so scary, and my world was like big and small at the same time. Every night I would tune in and I would watch Have I Told You the One About and feed her and learn how to feed her and learn how to put her down. And so I have loved this show. Thanks for letting me be a part of it.
Well, that's a real legacy right there. That's a great putting this to bed.
Yeah.
Well, love to you and
Love you too.
Sophia. Love
Yeah.
love out to the whole world.
Yeah. Great.
Mwah.